Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Happy Bringling. Thank you so much for coming to our another show on Bringle Talks. So we have a very eminent personality today from Canada who has got an immense experience right from starting from scratch and now building up a $1 billion business and running and supporting so many businesses out there and in India with his unique technology and psychology experience. And that's kind of going to bring up so unique experiences for the entrepreneurs and business owners that how they can use the psychology and technology to their advantage when it comes to sales and marketing. So I think without further delay, I would like to request Manoj to introduce himself a bit about his journey and what is that unique thing which he's doing with psychology and technology.
Hi, thank you so much, Anshav. So excited to be here with you. So I am innovation evangelist. I'm one of the leading experts in the field of AI. I have 4 patents in AI and machine learning. I have authored 2 books on technology. And I'm running a company here in Vancouver, Canada. We provide big data, AI consulting, blockchain consulting, and software and technology consulting to startups, from startups to Fortune 500 companies. Some of the clients that we have served, some notable names include Microsoft and IBM, ING Bank, Pearson Education. And on the personal side, as you said, like I bring a lot of rich experience of 25 years in the startup field. So I provide mentorship and coaching. And as you said, we also have a lot of expertise. I'm also a behavioral scientist and a student of meditation. So I learn a lot about the mind, about neuroscience, about psychology. And as I will describe it later, there's a huge continuum between how our mind thinks and especially technologies like artificial intelligence. So we utilize that to create some really compelling solutions for personal branding, for getting more market share for companies, getting better customer loyalty, better customer lifetime value, and then creating some unique solutions which solve really challenging problems for people. So those are some of the things that we do. In terms of my journey, I grew up in India and coming from a very humble background. And so when I came over to Canada, I got a job very quickly. This was in the dot-com boom time. And as dot-com boom happened, dot-com bust also happened. So I lost my job then. And then I got another job in New York with a startup. And then September 11th happened and the company lost the funding and everything. So I lost my job there as well. So after a series of these setbacks, I realized that, I basically needed to do something on my own because things like job security doesn't really exist even in North America. And so I started consulting. I started a small consulting company, which is what I'm running now. And I started consulting with a lot of startups in multiple domains, multiple industries, from wearables to logistics to real estate, education, healthcare. And what I realized was that a lot of the problems that we focus on in our business world, they have been solved in multiple domains, multiple industries or locations. And every group or every industry solves that problem in a different way. The funny thing is that people who are involved in a certain industry, they never get an opportunity to look at other industries and see how they have solved that problem. So for me, it was very interesting to take some solutions from one industry to another and then sort of see how it all works. And for these people, it was a unique solution, yet this solution has been tried in another industry for decades, right? So that is the same principle that we apply in terms of mixing behavioral science, psychology, and AI to create really solutions that that are humanizing technology, that are resonating at a very deep level, psychological level with people, and just creating a lot of impact.
That's great, Manoj. So I think I can see a very soothing background, when you're talking, and that's something is coming in from your meditation experience. Now you have mentioned something about losing your job, even being in North America, and you found that job is not the secured area, to work upon. So what made you shift on that area to from an employment to an entrepreneurship journey, rather than looking for another job and working onto it? So, what was your emotional state around it? Because I remember my journey, because I lost my job in 2013, and that is again because of some recession. Company wasn't able to survive the high salary which I was drawing, and it became a big problem, for myself. But what was your kind of took a journey towards entrepreneurship?
Well, I mean, I'm an engineer by education and experience. So when there are 2 or 3 data points that are pushing me certain way, then I try to listen to it. So when 2 or 3 times it happened in quick succession, I knew that life and universe was trying to tell me something. So there is no point in keep doing the same thing over and over again. When you see a pattern emerging, then you need to try something new.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how, technology, I understand that's your domain expertise. You've been an engineer, you've worked in large corporates or businesses. What made you transition to, the mindfulness part of it?
Yeah, so those were some really drastic personal experiences. I've had a challenging life in terms of relationships, my close relationships with my parents, with my spouse, um, and when you deal with those type of things, you try to find deeper meaning in life. Professional success is one thing, but if you have unrest in your personal life, you need to look for certain answers. So those were the some of the challenges that I had to face, to which sort of led me into that path.
Okay, interesting. See, most of the entrepreneurs actually face these kind of challenges because when they get into their entrepreneurial journey, their personal life becomes a complete mess. I mean, frankly speaking, because they are totally dedicated towards their vision, what they're trying to do, how they can achieve what they're looking at from towards that vision, and things like that. Now, what is that message you would want to give, probably to the generation or to the, the other budding entrepreneurs to focus on their relationships basis on your experience with your relationships and the business venture? How can they balance that work life balance for themselves?
See, I mean, I wish there was one answer that will one size fit all answer, because the thing is that, as you said, entrepreneurship sometimes becomes all consuming effort. And if you don't have people who are a good support system, no matter what you do, it will not resonate, because as you know, entrepreneurs, they have a different way of thinking about things. They have a different way of looking at things. They find opportunities where other people don't find it, right? So if you try to explain this, and as entrepreneurs, we do that all day long. We try to explain what we are trying to do to investors, to customers, to employees, to partners. Some people get it, some people don't get it, right? So it's the same thing with your personal relationship. Some people will get it, some people will not get it. Now the idea is to try and have open communication as much as possible. Try and find that support system, that even though if they don't understand it, they can support you in certain way. Now if it doesn't work out, then you have to make a choice, which way you want to go, uh, because if uh, there is no alignment between what you're trying to do and the people around you, um, then of course it is going to cause a conflict. And when that conflict happens, you have to make a choice which way you want to go. Because the idea is that if you say, oh, I will deal with this problem later, and then try to push through it, it will just delay the results, because your mental well-being is the most important thing as you're trying to overcome these big challenges. So you have to find that alignment no matter what. Like even if you decide that, hey, my path is going forward, and if the support system I don't have around me, that is costing me, then you may have to pay the biggest price of sort of letting go of that relationship. Or if you say, hey, this relationship is more important than what I was trying to do, then also you have that choice, but you have to make that choice.
Right. Got that. So, see, I think that's a brilliant part of it, because managing that mindset and solving that problem at that point in time is very, very critical. I remember it was a very tough time for Steve Jobs as well. He also had his own history about, his girlfriend actually leaving him, saying that you are totally involved in your business. And he somehow took the decision to really move out of that relationship. And of course, he still feels not very good about. I mean, he used to not feel very good about it. But yeah, that's a personal choice, and I think entrepreneurs they have to make a lot of sacrifices. So I think this is one of the sacrifice which he did make, of course, for the benefit of the country people, or for the world. But yeah, it's a tough decision. It's a personal decision as well. Like I was interviewing one of the entrepreneur based out of India, who is now turned out into a venture capitalist. And he had actually started to promote Ayurveda. Being an Indian, he wanted to promote India to the forefront and as a patriot. And he started that Ayurveda thing because his grandfather was running this, had this Ayurveda brand, or he was an Ayurvedic doctor. And he has actually treated his asthma completely through Ayurveda. So
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to take that legacy forward. He started that business, and within 4 years, he had sold that business to the large group out here, the Goenkas group. And then I was, whenever somebody asked him this question, why did you decide to sell off your, parents or a the family legacy to that? I could see the different expression on the face, because it's a very tough decision. It's definitely a personal decision, but at some point in time, you have to move on to something where you can add more value rather than sticking to one particular situation around, and let it be done by somebody else. So I think you're right. It's a very difficult situation or difficult decision, I would say, to take that kind of choice or make that choice. Yes. Thanks, Manoj. So, Manoj, let's go back to your journey a little bit, maybe a little more deeper into how you started. So, you lost your jobs maybe a couple of times, you said, and then you thought of starting up your own business. And I'm sure, I don't know how much funds you had and what thoughts you were having in. So, as soon as you decided to jump into entrepreneurship or starting up your own business, what was the first thing which you did, and how did you actually start developing, or starting up that business from that first, what is that first step you took, and how did you travel it through to that organization where you are now consulting even the Fortune 500 companies?
Well, I mean, there are a few myths. One of the things that I do is, as I said, I provide mentorship to entrepreneurs, and one of the programs that I have is called Business Myths Uncovered. And one of the myths that people have, and this is a recent phenomena, that you really need a lot of funding to start a business. Businesses and entrepreneurship is not a new venture. It has been around for thousands of years. And when a few hundred years, even 50, 60 years ago, when somebody wanted to start a business, there was no such thing as venture capital. So you had to figure out how to, get a little bit of funding, set up a small operation. And basically, entrepreneurship is just about solving other people's problems, whatever people are facing in terms of problems, and they are pressing problems, and they are not able to solve that those problems themselves. You can come in with a solution, and people will pay for it. So in my case, it was quite easy because consulting is a service-oriented business, and in service-oriented business, you don't actually need a lot of investment. All you need is to find people who have problems and sort of talk to them. And that is what I did, like building a small network, local network of businesses, startups, seeing what kind of problems they are facing, and then providing them solutions. And for the longest time, it was a very small operation, just me and a couple of other people. And then around 2018, another event happened in my personal life where I said, okay, I need to expand this operation. I need to go location independent, because most of the business I was getting was all local. So this is what sort of the journey from a local company to now a global brand has been basically the reincarnation of the last 3 years.
Wow. And when did you actually start running your first service assignment? What was
that? Was
year?
in year 2000, 2001.
Oh, so you almost 18 years you were doing consulting business for that long locally out there.
Yeah,
Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Pretty good. And what was your first assignment, Manoj, which you had kind of started on? And what is that one problem area which you were solving it from your service space point of view?
Well, I mean, it's like in technology, you run into many situations, and that is why I said, like, I really feel lucky. And also, just out of curiosity, I was very interested in getting into different domains. So I think the very first challenge was in the fintech domains. So there was a company doing remote payments, and they in those days there was no credit cards transactions were not considered as safe, so they were accepting actual cash payment, dollar bills, right? So they needed to integrate that with their system. So I worked on that. Then the next one was education. So this company was building large scale software for universities and schools to manage students and their tests and content for the courses and things like that. So there were multiple domains I was working in, absorbing the way that they solve some peculiar problems in their domain, and then just adding more efficient ways through technologies, finding more efficient ways to get this done, and then taking these projects global, because even in year 2000, now the whole world is sort of getting used to remote work. But even back in 2000, tech industry was going remote. So we had teams all over the world who were working on certain projects, delivering the value to the client. So all those experiences were quite unique and gave me a lot of insights on how you build scalable systems, how you solve these problems, how do you interact with the global workforce, what are the sort of the cultural nuances you need to take into account to be to basically be effective in this globally shrinking world of entrepreneurship and business.
Okay, that's great. So you said you were supporting a fintech brand and then an education company, which is an edtech company. So were you kind of supporting them on building up the technology platform, or also supporting them on growing their businesses as well? So what was your role out there?
Well, so primarily it was all technology. I had not gotten anywhere close to marketing and sales. In fact, in many cases, what happens in boardrooms and things like that, when you try to share your opinion about something that you're not considered an expert on. People just say, what do you know? Okay, just keep quiet. And you may have experienced something like that. So whenever I had some ideas around marketing and sales and I shared it, people said, you are a tech guy. I mean, just stick to technology. So that was like, okay, maybe that is the right thing to do. Let's just stick to technology. But as I said, when in 2018, when I had to grow my business, that's when I needed to really dig deeper into sales and marketing. And now the same people who used to say, hey, you're a techie guy, they come to me and say, how do you do all these things? So
Right. So now they realize that hidden potential, which they were kind of undervaluing it till that time.
well,
Great.
not only
So,
them, but you also have an imposter syndrome. You believe all these things and say, hey, yeah, I mean, who am I to talk about this? I should just keep quiet. So it's not just other people undervalue you. You also, a person also undervalues himself or herself. That's where the imposter syndrome comes from, right?
that's something very great or amazing you've shared, because there are a lot of technology entrepreneurs or technology I would say the experts who think that they cannot do sales and marketing. I have, because I am myself is an engineer, and whenever I talk to them in terms of entrepreneurship or sales and marketing, they always tells me, Anshab, we cannot do sales and marketing. That's not my area, my cup of tea. And I'm happy with my, let's say, manufacturing job or a software development or a kind of a backend kind of a job. And and this is, you are a live example where you have actually traveled that journey from being a technology or a techie guy, which we typically use it as a slang, and to a person who is now supporting on sales and marketing as well. And now you said you have a 4 patents also, which is kind of merging these two aspects of maybe the sales and marketing and technology, and we'll definitely talk about it. But that's something which I would want to give a message also to all the entrepreneurs out there, that one thing which I have also realized is that whatever your core expertise is, it is not just about knowing about that area. When you're running a business or you start up your own company, you should know about each and everything. And based on our design your unicorn methodology, we have seen that there are around 4 areas, 7 pillars, and 105 factors which can make or break the business. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, you'll have to learn all of them. You may not do it all of them. You may not work on everything, but you should understand what exactly it works. How does it work? Because if you tomorrow, let's say, trying to build up a website and you don't know how to build up a website, or you don't know how to do a digital marketing, any vendor or anybody can come in and pull you around. That okay, this cannot be done. This will be done at this cost, and you will have no ways to really analyze it, and you will eventually have you know not very good relationship, or as well the business operations as well. Your profitability may hit, you may not get the results which you desire. So I think, in my opinion, it's not just about the technology, the sales and marketing, your business value proposition, the business modeling, the financial modeling, the cash flow modeling, legal aspects. All of those are going to be very, very important. So, and I'm sure, Manu, you also would have learned all these things over a period of time, because running a business is not easy. It's about being jack of all trades. You will definitely be a master in one, which is core domain as technology. You may build up another skill set as well, but technology will always remain your core strength part of it, right?
Absolutely.
So what you have seen in your journey when it comes to, or what you would like to advise to the budding entrepreneurs or the existing entrepreneurs who are struggling to survive in their businesses, that how they should kind of manage the various aspects of running a business? What was your experience, and how did you overcome, and what's the message you would like to give it to them?
Well, I mean, the core message about business is that business is about people. Okay, so whether that's employees, whether that's your customers, your partners, vendors, what have you. If you focus on learning more about people, getting curious about people, learning what drives them, what are their priorities, what are their hopes, dreams, objections, what are they thinking, then you will do very well. Any problem can be solved as long as you have good people around you. As you said, nobody can do everything, but the problem happens when you try to either take control of everything and think that nobody can do the things as good as you can. That shows a lack of trust in other people, and the lack of trust happens when you don't understand the when you don't understand other people's capabilities, when you don't understand what where they are coming from, when you don't understand that everybody tends to make mistakes. We also make mistakes, and creating an environment for an entrepreneurial environment for not just you. I mean, it's a huge mistake to think that you are the only entrepreneur in your team. Everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. All your team members, even the intern that you're hiring, needs to be an entrepreneur. And what that means is entrepreneurship is about hit and trial. So you don't know what is going to work in the market. So you need to allow even the interns to make mistakes. You cannot say, oh, I am the boss. That's why, I was not able to close a deal. That was a mistake. So let's move on. So I am allowed to make mistakes, but you as an employee are not allowed to make mistakes. So those are some of the things that I find that, people delay their own success by being too rigid and not learning a little bit about what people want, and then contributing to everybody's growth. It's like, if you are expert at something, nobody cares. Expertise is dime a dozen. A lot of people have expertise these days. What people care about is how much you care about their priorities, right? So if you care about their priorities, then the secondary thing is, okay, what kind of credibility you have, what kind of expertise you have, how can you help them grow? And that's what entrepreneurship is all about.
That's great. So, see, I see some of these new generation, the youth who are coming into the industry. They have good potential. They probably have done some good education as well, and been a scholar also. But when they come to a company like startup company or any new company, they actually are clueless. They need directions. They are probably, they're afraid of making mistakes, because probably that's how our education system has kind of trained them. That if you do a mistake, you're considered as a culprit, or out there. Now, how a leader or a person who is kind of an empathetic leader, like what you're mentioning, how that that leader can generate that curiosity to learn within these young individuals, as well as allow them to make mistakes, how that message can be passed on very subtly. Because see, in the flurry of actions, there are so many things which is going on. What happens is that you tend to miss out coaching these new people, either the interns or the employees. And eventually, what happens is they will have their own pre biases with them, and they continue to work. So, what do you suggest to these entrepreneurs when they hire these interns or the freshly graduated people? How they should kind of onboard them? What is the message which they can give it to them so that they become clear that they can also do mistakes?
See, I mean, this is where things like leadership and culture comes in, right? Like you need to, you need to build a culture where you promote entrepreneurship. You make it clear mistakes are okay, but repeated mistakes are not okay. So, meaning mistakes are, when you make a mistake, basically it's a learning opportunity to say, okay, this is not how it's going to work. So let's try a different way, right? So as you know, Thomas Edison, when he invented the light bulb, he tried 10,000 ways and failed. And basically he said, I found 10,000 ways how light bulb cannot be made, right? So the idea is to promote that culture and not make it and make a safe place for people to say, hey, I made a mistake. So, I learned this lesson. When people are not afraid to make mistakes, then of course they will try everything else. But if you set an example that, hey, if you make a mistake, you are going to be called into the office and yelled at, obviously nobody's going to dare make a mistake, and they are going to play safe. When you play safe, playing safe is not what is going to lead to big success in a business. So business is all about taking risks, especially in a startup environment. uh, there is a deep correlation between how much risk you take and how much reward you get, right? And if only one person is allowed to take risk, which is the entrepreneur, and nobody else is taking a risk at all, that company is not going to go too far. Make sense? And then the idea is to communicate this, lead by example, to say, hey, I made a mistake today, let's talk about it, I learned a lesson today, right? So that means that people see you as a flawed human being, as we all are. But on the contrary, most CEOs, most founders, they try to portray themselves as a perfect human being, and yet expect people to be also perfect, which is unrealistic expectation. And so once people see you as their equal, once they see you that, hey, this is how I need to behave, and then moreover, you also understand their priorities. You also understand, like whenever we onboard somebody in my team, some of the few questions we ask is, okay, what are your long-term goals? What is it that you want to achieve in life? And how can we help you get to that level of success? People like the entrepreneur has a dream to build something big, but now you're hiring a project manager. That project manager's dream may not be to manage projects throughout their life. I have a project manager, her dream is to open a restaurant. She's really good at cooking. So my goal as her boss is to help her get to that goal, to open a restaurant in a few years. It's not about uh, getting her to manage my projects perfectly, but my goal for her is to help her open the restaurant. Now, when she knows that my goal and her goal is aligned, then the work part of it, the project management part of it, takes care of itself. Does it make sense?
Brilliant, brilliant. I still remember. I don't know the person, the expert name, but this very example has actually reminded me of the same, wherein they were talking about that. Talk to the employees, talk to your team, what their real aspirations are. It's not about the work which they're doing today, but it's what they really want to do it in the future. And not only just their personal aspirations, probably what's happening in their family life, understand a bit about it, so that they are more closer to you emotionally rather than coming to work only for that monthly paycheck. So I think that makes it as a very, very different point out there. Yeah, okay, so wonderful. Now, I think what you have, Manu, the success which you have achieved today is you're focused on two core principles, which I could understand till now. One is people, which is, of course, you require people to run your business. It's everything. Organization is nothing but a set of people. Otherwise, there is no organization. The second aspect which you have also picked up is technology, which is the core or the backbone of any organization, because that's how you scale up your businesses out there. Now, you have also mentioned about that you have got 4 patents with you. So I would like to know a little bit more about them. And, what is that, though, what are those patents and how those patents can help businesses or entrepreneurs, maybe budding entrepreneurs or any business owners out there?
So those patents were for specific technologies and products. One patent was in education, where personalized learning is becoming a big thing, and we worked on an invention to personalize each lesson plan. So when students in a class of 50, let's say they are learning math in grade 5, everybody gets the same exact curriculum, whereas some kids may be a little bit further ahead, some people may be a little bit further behind. So in this environment, what this system can do is it can understand the level of each student, and then if they are further ahead, they can skip a few lessons. If they are further behind it, they will get a little bit extra help and extra content to to speed up their learning. So these are the kind of inventions that I focus on. Another one is one where a lot of people experience joint pains because of some disfiguration in their feet. So they have to stand on their feet all day long for their jobs, like doctors and nurses. And because of the feet disfiguration, their posture suffers, which causes the joint pains. So in this case, we created a full end-to-end additive manufacturing process where we could take some images from the mobile phone of their feet and then create a 3D model, very, very accurate 3D model within 2 millimeters of accuracy. And then that 3D model gets fed into a 3D printer. And that 3D printer creates a wearable product that is custom fitted to the individual. And that corrects the posture, gets rid of the joint pain. And this technology was so successful that a $43 billion conglomerate, the Bayer is the name of the German company, they white labeled that technology and sold it under their brand name. So these are some of the types of inventions that I focus on, which have real impact on humanity.
That's something great. So in the education segment, so you mentioned about your health health invention. What about the education platform? Is that platform also running somewhere right now where students can go and take the benefit of that platform?
Yeah. So these platforms were in the specifically on the education side. There's a large company called Desire to Learn. So they bought out those platforms. And one of the inventions that I worked on was so effective. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they invested in it, they supported that product, and President Obama mentioned it in his speech. So education is a huge field, and it's going through a rapid transformation. So these are some of the impactful work, and if somebody wants to learn more about it, I can send more information. But yeah, Desire to Learn actually bought these inventions out, and they are running it as a full-fledged product in the marketplace.
Sure, I think being into the education segment, Manoj, ourselves, so we would be really interested to know more about it. And of course, there are a number of students which we work with, so we could see if we could find out some benefits for them. So that will be of real help. So I'll definitely connect with you offline to get those details. Now, coming back to the next question of mine, it is you mentioned about that, and I see on your LinkedIn profile as well that you are working on blockchain and IoT and AI and different technologies. Now, I mean, AI ML is comparatively little older technology or maybe more tested technology. But blockchain is one technology which is still not very tested in different domains. So what are your thoughts towards the blockchain industry, and especially the way so many NFTs are coming in, the cryptocurrencies are coming in? How do you see the future of blockchain?
See, blockchain is I will not speak too much about crypto. I mean, I have my opinions, but I'll let me talk about blockchain first. So blockchain, the core strength or revolutionary thing that blockchain provides is that it can eliminate the need of a higher authority to establish trust between two parties. So what do I mean by that? So from the time that commerce started, people have been exchanging goods and money, but over time people realize that we cannot trust each other as human beings. Okay, because let's say I promise to give you some service or product, and you promise to pay me 30 days later. On the 29th day, you can change your mind and say, oh, you know what, I don't want to pay you. And because of all these issues, we have institutions like banks, notary services, court, legal system, registry services, all that stuff came into being because these higher authorities needed to enforce the rules to establish that trust, because we inherently as humans, we cannot trust each other. Is it making sense? Now, these institutions, just by their role in society to exist, they charge hefty fee. So if you go to a bank, you deposit your money, somehow, somewhere they're going to charge you money, a fee, right? Now,
Right.
with blockchain, what happens is, with blockchain, technology has enabled us to defer that trust to technology and establish a ecosystem where we can trust each other without relying on a third party. So what that means is, now those third parties don't need to be paid hefty fees, and slowly we can start to rely on each other through technology. Now, the fact is, even blockchain infrastructure needs some investment to run. So the fee and those type of things will still be there, but there are new models coming out where we can, reduce the fee, or in the distributed financial world, we can sort of get more incentives to counteract the fee and whatnot. That is an area which is still in its infancy. So what happens is that when a new technology comes in, people sort of get creative and say, okay, what else can I use it for? What else can I do? It's not that we have, in my opinion, this is my humble opinion, again, many people may disagree with it. We are not at a stage where the decision is clear that this is the way blockchain will be used. Cryptocurrencies are the way to the future. NFTs are the way to the future. We are just in a transition phase right now. So if people may recall, there are instances in the industry where, VHS tapes versus Betamax was a big fight. DVD versus Blu-ray versus HD Plus was a big standard argument. So all those things take time to resolve themselves. So it is yet to be seen how the world will settle around blockchain. But as blockchain as a technology is here to stay, how we utilize it, how we actually incorporate it into our daily lives, in my opinion, it is still in flux until and unless we have solid regulation in place and universal support from the governments on how this technology will be adopted. Because as I just described, it's a very disruptive technology. Because if banks are not needed, if the government registration systems are not needed, if people can transact bypassing custom rules and all the laws and rules of the land, that's a huge problem for the authorities that are in place right now. So until they are on board, I cannot say, okay, this is written in stone that this is how blockchain will be used. Make sense? Is it making sense?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. I think you have also touched upon another point on the cost part of it, because somebody was telling me about that using blockchain could be very costly, especially from the data storage point of view. So which you are saying that I think it is still at an infant stage, and it will need a lot of research and probably the further developments to really reuse this or find out more use cases of this disruptive technology. So thanks. I think, Manu, that's something really, really good. Before I jump on to the little fun part of it, a little personal side of it, I have one last question to you. Is about, your new product or your new service, which you are doing it from a psychology and technology, and you're supporting businesses to generate more and more leads. I know that is one of the recent products you are working upon. So could you throw some light on that and how it can help businesses? And if somebody wants to take the benefit of it, how they can reach out?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can see the evidence of this in the last 2 decades. Amazon started as a company, in 1997 or something like that, right? And right now in 24 short years, it has become one of the most valuable companies in the world. Similarly, Google started similar time frame. So Facebook started even later, like around 2005. The idea here is that all these companies have become trillion-dollar companies in a very, very short period of time. And the reason is because they really understand the value of data. What does data provide? Data provides us really hidden patterns in how people are thinking. What are they thinking? What do they really want? Because as human beings, we are all biased. We were talking about this earlier. We are all biased. We look at the world through our own lenses, through our own experiences. If you are an engineer, you will see systems in the world. If you are an artist, you will see art in the world. If you're a musician, you will see everything through a musical point of view. But as an individual, we cannot see the entire world and see, okay, what are majority of the people thinking? But with data, you can find these patterns. You can say, okay, 60% of the people want a product which is a yellow colored shirt. And as a human being, you may dislike yellow to such an extent that it didn't even register in your mind that there is such a demand for a product like that. But when you put millions and millions of data points together and you find these patterns, that becomes very, very powerful. And that is the reason why Amazon and Google and Facebook, they know more about you than you yourself know. And that is the reason why they keep growing, keep leveraging that knowledge about you and turning around and selling lots of products to you. And that's what we provide, to companies, where whether that is an internal project where they want to get buy-in from their employees, they want to execute some change, or as I said, in the education field, I mentioned one of the examples where we help people to personalize their lesson plans. So all this is possible through data. Once you understand data, once you can figure out what are the patterns that people are looking for, and that is what psychology is all about, mass psychology. How do you understand what people want? And in reverse as well, how do you get buy-in? So let's say you are trying to launch a product, you are trying to establish your personal brand, you're trying to get attention, you're trying to spread awareness. It's a very noisy world out there. But once you understand the psychology of people, what they want, and combine that with technology, automation, AI, you can really make very, very fast progress. Very, very effective solutions can come out of that. So that is what we provide to businesses, to entrepreneurs, to professionals who really want to, get fast results utilizing these paradigms. Did it make sense?
Absolutely. Manoj, so if somebody wants to reach out to you, what is the best way to reach out to you especially for getting these kind of services? If you could just elaborate on that, I think.
Yeah, easiest way is connect with me on LinkedIn or visit my website, manujagarwal.com, and send us an email. But yeah, I mean, I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm active on Facebook, so they can connect with me on any of these platforms.
Okay, great. So if somebody wants to really grow their businesses exponentially and use the power of psychology and technology, you know how to reach Manoj now, and you can really reach out to him at LinkedIn or at Facebook. You can also check his website, manujagarwal.com, and that's where you can get his email ID as well. So I think with this, I will just end this complex part of the discussion. I'll now go to a little fun part of the question. There'll be a little kind of a quick fire rounds. So Manoj, what would you kind of tell it to 18-year-old Manoj if you get a chance to go back to that time? What one message you would like to give it to Manoj that you should take care of this once you are growing old?
Well, I will say remove all your mental boundaries, because there are no boundaries in this world. We are putting a lot of boundaries on ourselves. So that's what I used to do.
Oh, wow. Very inspiring message. Okay. Now, who are the 3 people, dead or alive, you would like to have kind of go for a dinner date or something, and why?
One is Elon Musk for sure. The other one will be Sadhguru. Sadhguru. Some people may know his name, Sadhguru, right? And then
Right, right. The Isha
then
Foundation.
that's right. That's right. And then the third one will be, I will say, Osho, Rajneesh Osho. Like again, these are
Oh,
some people in India, they may recognize the names, but yeah, these are the three people. And the reason is that once again, these people are pioneers in what they do. They understand humans. They understand a lot of things that they look at the world very differently. So I will like to see how they look at the world and try to learn from them.
great. So I think all these three people are revolutionary out there. You know, they have done really wonderful. And I'm actually pretty surprised to find out, you coming up with the name of Rajneesh Osho, because not many people know about his background. But he was kind of a very big visionary. The kind of movement he had started off, he was literally had so many issues as well, you know, with respect to, because the kind of just things which he was promoting, the open mindset and things, was not being accepted by so many people. But he was one of those visionaries who could get and he was running it pure professionally. It was not, while it looks to be a the spiritual guru or those kind of things, but he had his own set of investors who were kind of coming in into that, and he made this as a revolution out there. So that's something very, very interesting for me. Now, when it comes to Elon Musk, is it because of some technology or technological experience or the kind of vision which he's looking at, or is it something else which you have specific in mind while having a discussion
No,
with
it's
Elon
about,
Musk?
as I said earlier, the idea is that everybody can do what he's doing, but the thing is, he has uh, uh, we all put all these boundaries around our minds and say, oh, this is not possible, this is not possible, how can I do it, this is, nobody can do this. So to a certain extent, he's like the kind of person who pushes the boundaries to unimaginable levels, and that is the core skill that one needs to learn. Everything else is like technology and all that stuff. Like, as I said, expertise is dime a dozen. A lot of people have expertise, but it's like, how do you remove those boundaries in your mind to apply those technologies to do things which nobody else think are possible? That is the key thing that I focus on, and I would love to learn about how he looks at it.
Great. So apparently, I was actually kind of got a chance to work not directly but indirectly from an with Sadhguru at some point in time, because he's also building up a technological platform to from his learnings point of view, and the kind of vision which he's looking at integrating the all the rivers and things, and the kind of movement he has started. It's just kind of amazing. So we will definitely, try to see if I can get some connects out there, and I'll connect, connect him to you if there is any possibility. So if you're okay with that, would I be able?
Absolutely,
Is it okay
absolutely,
that if I'll connect you to
absolutely.
that
Yeah,
group? I
I
don't know whether
actually, no, I actually wrote to his team. This was about 2 years ago. I was still sort of under the shadows, so obviously they said, he's very busy. But yeah, I mean, if there is a connection, I could have some time with him. That will be awesome.
So there is a technology team which I am connected with. I mean, indirectly, as I said, but I can check with them and
Yeah, yeah,
at least share their numbers with you, or maybe
yeah,
make you kind of get along together.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then
Absolutely, absolutely,
maybe there is a way around out there. So
absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
all. That's
Thank you
all
so
I
much.
think.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
I
That'll be
thought I'll
awesome.
just share with you.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll reach out to you on that. Great. So Manoj, I think the one last thing. What is that one message you would like to give as a parting message to the young generation, to the entrepreneurs, business owners, which they should always remember? and which can really make them successful or help them, I call that help them design their unicorns or $1 billion, business models.
See, first thing is that is a fallacy to say, design unicorns. Nobody can design unicorns. Nobody can design. I mean, if you set a goal of building $1 billion company, that is a wrong goal to begin with. That again is my humble opinion. Okay, the idea is to become more self-aware. The solutions don't lie outside. The solutions lie inside. So you need to become self-aware and focus on what you are good at. Now, once you become self-aware, then just let go and see what comes your way. You could build a $1 trillion company because you are already starting with $1 billion in mind. You may be way off based on your capability, because your potential could be a $1 trillion company, but you will be focusing on building $1 billion company. That'll be a wrong path to take, right? So becoming self-aware is the key first, and then everything else follows from there.
Wow, what a lovely message, Manoj. And I think when you started off saying that, there's nothing called design your unicorn or it's a fallacy, I was actually taken back. But then you kind of gave a very different perspective towards it. That, it's not about just looking at $1 billion or $1 million company. I mean, of course, it was $1 million at some point in time. Now it's $1 billion company. But why not $1 trillion or maybe multiples of $1 trillion companies? Because like you mentioned, Amazon, Google, or Facebook have become $1 trillion company in just 15, 20 years span period of time. 20, 25 years, which was not even nobody has even thought about it, that somebody can become a $1 trillion company in just a short period of time. People will say you take 20 years or 30 years to build up a business which is just generating couple of millions, couple of millions of dollars as well. Forget about $1 billion or $1 trillion. And now you are saying that we have examples of having $1 trillion companies, and now you're giving it as a very different perspective. Internalize it, understand your self potential, and aim for something which is really your potential. And it may not be $1 million or $1 billion or $1 trillion, maybe much more. So thank you so much, Manoj, for your time and such a lovely message. I really appreciate your time, and the learnings which you have given is going to be immensely valuable for our viewers. We'll share this recording with you, and we will work accordingly on that.
Awesome.
I will also want to know a little bit about your book, right? You have a book as well, if I'm not wrong. I think we have
Yeah. I've written 2 books, but those books are very hardcore technology books. Nobody, nobody in their right mind will read it for any insight. But okay. I plan to write some other books which are more generic. So yeah, I mean, those books are on cybersecurity. The book that I have written one is on cybersecurity, one is on scalable cloud systems. If somebody is interested in something like that, they can read it, but they are very, very dry technical books.
That's amazing. I think I missed to ask on those books as well. But I think I'm sure there would be some techies who would love to read those books. So you can definitely find it on Amazon, right?
Absolutely.
Manu, they are on Amazon. Yeah. Okay, great. So you can just find those books out there, and it can give you a lot of technical support while building up your business. Once again, thank you so much, Manoj, for your time, and wish you a very, very great day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Bye-bye.